Okay, let's start with our rock notes. I know we feel pretty rushed when we went through these rock notes, and this way you can listen to them a few times to kind of help you. First, we need to talk about what a rock is. Most rocks contain at least one or more minerals. Some of the more common rock-forming minerals are quartz, feldspar, mica, or calcite. Remember, it is what we kind of call a hodgepodge of many different things. It can be made up of minerals. It can have some rock fragments in it. It can have some glass, volcanic glass. It can have some organic matter or other natural materials. So it's made up of a lot of different things. The rock cycle is a process that creates and it changes these rocks. It's the transformation of these rocks from one type to another. You must keep in mind that this process is an extremely slow process. It doesn't happen in a matter of minutes, and it doesn't happen in a matter of weeks. It happens over many hundreds of thousands and millions of years. So the rock cycle itself is a transformation of the three rock types in between each other. The three rock types are metamorphic, igneous, and sedimentary. Remember when we did our notes, we watched this little video on the rock cycle. If you go back to that video and you click on it, it really would be a good idea to watch that for a couple of minutes. The one thing I really want you to get out of this video is that as you go from one type of rock type to another, it's not linear. Igneous does not have to become sedimentary. It can become sedimentary, it can become metamorphic, and it can erode away and then come back to what it is itself. So it's not a linear process. These arrows can go in all directions. The thing that changes most of these rock things, such as the forces of weathering and melting and heating and pressure, these are all different forms of energy. And we talked about energy before, and one of the things about energy is that law of conservation of energy. It's that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it can just be transferred. And we have the same type of thing when we talk about matter. We don't want to create it or destroy it. We always have to take an account for whatever matter we start with. We have to be able to account for all of it if we transform that matter from one item to another. Whether it's all transformed or some of it is lost, we need to be able to account for all of it. So the rock cycle shows how rock can be weathered down into small parts and grains, and that erosion can then take those materials and carry them away. Be sure that you understand the difference between weathered and erosion for the test. Intrusive versus extrusive rocks are different ways to categorize igneous rocks that are formed by volcanic material, magma and or lava that is cooled and hardened. Intrusive rocks are the ones that are formed from the magma below the surface, and extrusives are formed from the lava that cools on the top of the surface. So intrusive inside the earth, extrusive on the exterior of the earth. They're slowly cooled magma, and when it cools very slowly, then you get very large grains in the rock, and they're easy to see with the naked eye. Now that cooling is different than with the minerals, because when we talked about the minerals, that cooling slowly gives us very small minerals that's hard to see with the naked eye. There are three types of rock types that we're going to talk about: sedimentary, metamorphic, and igneous. So let's start with our igneous rocks. These form when magma cools and hardens. Now remember, this magma inside the earth can do it intrusively, or it can come out of into the exterior of the earth through a volcano or other processes, and that lava then cools and hardens and creates igneous rocks. So what is it that causes this magma to occur? What is it that can heat up the interior of the earth so much that it melts the rock? One source of that is radioactive decay of the elements that are left behind after the earth was formed. There's, as these radioactive elements decay, which can take millions or billions of years to do, it releases a great deal of energy, and this energy will melt the rock around it. Then the magma, being much less dense than the rock around it, wants to force its way up through the rock so that it can get to the top, and that's how it then is forced forward. We can then classify igneous rock based also on its type of magma. If we use the term BAG, B-A-G, we can keep them in order. The basaltic rocks are dense and dark in color, and the andesitic rocks have a mineral composition between the other two, and the granitic rock are light and lower in density. So depending on what the color of the rock is and its density is going to be based on what type of magma made it. It's also the reason why some of the beaches in Hawaii have dark black sand. The next type of rock we're going to talk about is sedimentary rock. These are formed when sediments are pressed together and cemented together. The sediments are made from the weathering or breaking down of the rock, and then those sediments are then eroded or carried away so that they can then lay down layers of rock. We then have natural cement, natural glue that goes into these empty spaces and glues this together. An example of natural glue is a mineral. That's how sedimentary rocks are formed, and they can be layered. The last type of rock is metamorphic rock. And metamorphic rock is transformed due to an increased temperature and pressure, and it can take a really long time for this to happen. It can form from an igneous rock, a sedimentary rock, or even itself. It can keep getting pressed down farther and farther and more pressure and pressure on it to form a different type of metamorphic rock. Pressure from the rock layers above them and the temperature increase from the earth, it increases as you go down, and thus creating the metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock can be classified by its composition. They can either be foliated, which is layered, or it can be non-foliated, which is not layered. Now remember, our sedimentary rock was also layered, but it was also grainy and had a different feel and different texture to it. So you have to keep that in mind. So these foliated, they definitely have still have a different feel and a different texture and a different look to them, even though they're both foliated. The metamorphic is very different than the sedimentary. So you need to know for your test the difference between foliated and non-foliated. Well, that covers all of those notes for us today. So I want you to listen to this over and over again until you kind of get what you need under your belt, because it will be on the test tomorrow.